Hello and welcome again to Threads, a Lowell conversation. Threads is a new local show about current affairs, culture, and politics filmed here at LTC and out and about in your community. I'll be your host today, Corey Scuito. We have two in-studio guests today. First, we have Richard Howe Jr., who's the Register of Deeds, runs the local blog richardhowe.com, and he has recently released a book called Legendary Locals of Lowell on Arcadia Press.
Thanks for having me, Corey.
So what makes a Lowellian particularly legendary?
Well, it's not the person who got the most votes or had the most money. I think it's people who had an impact on the community, and some of those people were gained a lot of notoriety, and some did it very quietly below the radar. And it's a very relative term. I think in the book what I tried to do is identify people who represented larger groups of people. So it's just not an inventory of congressmen or mayors or business owners, things like that. It's a real swath of the entire community.
So does the book focus on any particular time? I was thinking about this last night. At this point, there's probably been 500,000 to 1 million people who have called Lowell home at some point. And are you looking particular time in the city's history, or are there other current people?
Well, the book tries to do a couple of things. The publisher's intent was to have a book of photographs, but I didn't want it just to be a scrapbook of random pictures. I tried to turn it into a history of Lowell. The publisher also didn't want it chronologically because they don't want all the old pictures grouped at the front and the newer pictures towards the end. So each chapter kind of tries to tell a story that, taken together, tell the bigger story of the city of Lowell. And there's a fairly lengthy introduction, and through the captions to the pictures, I think I talk about major developments in the city's history from its founding as a town in 1826 right up until the present day. So
how are you were saying that the book's broken down into different groups of sections of people, and people that might be emblematic of that particular. What are some of the groups that you discuss?
Well, there's 5 chapters. The first one is the mills, because the mills is really the reason why we're here, and so it's the creation of them, the growth, their peak time, but also their decline, which lasted a century, and their departure, but also their replacement. As everyone in the city knows, that the mill buildings weren't torn down. Some were, but the ones that were preserved have been reused, and they will be reused. So there was mills. Then the second chapter I called business, which was those businesses or industries that tried to take the place of the mills. Things like patent medicine was big. Printing was a big one. Munitions manufacturing was big as well. Then there's community, which I felt flows from the family unit to the church, the neighborhood store, the local, the sports team, whether it's at Lowell High School or Keith Academy, and social clubs, things like that, things that make this city the community it is. Then it was service, which starts with many people who served in the military, but also extends to law enforcement and public service. And finally, it's culture, which includes the national park, the folk festival, authors, painters, all that sort of thing.
So I know that looking through the book, I was expecting it to, I originally heard that you were writing a history. I was expecting it to be kind of a thick book, a lot of text. It's being through Arcadia, who we know through, they've done all of the Lowell the Mill City and Lowell the River City and the Images of America series. The book, it's beautifully laid out, and we're going to put pictures up on the screen. How did you go about coming by all of these images?
Well, what I want to point out is that I have got a co-author to the book.
Yes.
There's a gentleman named Howe Rosenberg. He goes by Mike Rosenberg, who he's a resident of Needham. He's a retired psychiatrist. But he's done books for Arcadia before, and most recently he published a biography of Francis Cabot Lowell, which is how I got to know him. I went to a couple of readings he did, and he's the one that invited me to collaborate with him on this book.
Okay.
He's very interested in the mills, and so he did most of the mill chapter, and he allowed me to do much of the rest of the book. But it was a collaborative effort. As to how I went going about getting the photographs, typically it was to use contacts in the community to go and see people who would agree to meet with me. Typically they were in their 80s or 90s. I had a small portable scanner and a laptop computer. I'd carry my backpack. I'd go sit down at their living room table. They'd spread out some pictures that were in a shoebox or in an album, allow me to scan them, and tell me the story about them. And that way the very valuable pictures never left their custody. And I think that's one of the things that will make this book particularly interesting, is that I didn't use any archive that is available to everyone. These pictures have not been seen by anyone outside the individual family unit that they belong to. So that accounts for a great many of the pictures in the book.
It is, leafing through it earlier, there's some really interesting candids in there. I know that you have, I think that the picture of Paul Tsongas is him talking to, can't remember. Who it is at the
Well,
moment.
there's several pictures of Paul Tsongas. There's one that's, it's a very nice picture, head and shoulders of him smiling. There's another one of he and Grady Mulligan together. And that's in the cultural section, because Paul, of course, was a great believer in the city's revitalization. And Grady was one of the leaders in bringing the creative economy to Lowell, which is the path the city has chosen to pursue for the past decade with great success. I think we've become known as a community of artists to some extent, with Western Ave and Brush and all these other galleries. And I think it was Grady Mulligan's vision that helped create that. So I think that I think some of the other things we did was we used older pictures that were in usually out of copyright books. But one of I think when I look at the city's history, it's in three phases. It was its rise to great prominence, a long period of decline, and then a rebirth. And I think that that's the story I tried to tell. So I would love to write an academic history of the city, something that was text-based, that was several hundred pages.
And you're a Civil War expert, right?
Well, I've studied a lot about the Civil War in Lowell, and that hopefully would be my next project, is to write a Lowell in the Civil War book. But this book is more of it doubles as a quick history of the city. So somebody that wanted to know, a quick telling of the city's story from start to the present day, to put events into some kind of context, might find this valuable, as well as entertaining. When you look through the early pages and you see the roster of individuals responsible for the city's founding, it's like reading a current street directory.
Yeah.
Dutton, Appleton, Jackson, and you know, when it's a street that you live on or you drive down every day, it would be nice to know where the name came from. This is a page from the culture section, and it shows the layout of the book. And of course, you have Jack Kerouac in the upper left. The bottom left is Sampatis Sampdakakis. He's a member of the Sampis family.
Yeah.
And he was a friend of Kerouac when they were growing up. And Kerouac actually wrote about him in some of his later novels. But Sam Sampis, as he is a short version of his name, was mortally wounded in Italy during World War II, and he died in a hospital in North Africa. On the upper right is Paul Marion, who most people know, and the bottom right is Bob Martin, who's a folk musician who incorporates some of the themes of Lowell into his music, and he performs around the world. But I think that this page shows the layout of the book, the proportion of text to images and that sort of thing.
I think that I know that a lot of my own interest in the history of Lowell, and as you know, I'm on the Historical Society board now, began through reading Arcadia books. You know, they're extremely accessible, and as I've been saying, you know, this book has a beautiful layout. I know that, you know, people recently, or not even just recently, have been very into, you know, Mickey Ward. He's in here somewhere.
Yep. And I think the image up now is of Father John O'Brien.
It is.
And he was the pastor of St. Patrick's Parish, but patent medicine was really big in Lowell. It was the Ayers and Hoods, and these two guys created it as cough syrup. And one of their best customers was Father John O'Brien. And when he would talk at his sermons on Sunday, he would urge his parishioners to try out this cough medicine. So they called it Father John's medicine. And most people know of Father John's medicine. Some may know who Father John was, but we have a picture of him. And that's kind of what I tried to do, was the people that live in the Ayer lofts. Who was Ayer? James Ayer, his brother Frederick. So they're all in the book. Because of my own interest in history, I tried to add the historians into the book. Coburn, Cowley, other people that have written histories of the city. The one that's up there now is, I found one of the more interesting ones. He's a young man named Norman Brissett, who enlisted in the United States Navy during World War II. When he was only 17, his father had to sign his enlistment papers. He became a radio operator gunner on a two-seat Navy bomber flying off an aircraft carrier. Well, he and his pilot were shot down in late July of 1945 right off the coast of Japan. They were taken prisoner, and they were held prisoner in the police station in Hiroshima, Japan, along with 10 other Americans. And they were still there on August 6, 1945, when the atomic bomb dropped. Brissett and one other guy survived the initial blast, and about a week later, more American prisoners were brought in, and they got to talk to Brissett the day before he died from the radiation sickness. And so they were able to come back and tell his family what happened. And so I think there were 12 Americans killed by the American atomic bomb, which I think is a story not many people know. And I think the fact that one of them was from Lowell and has family still living here is fascinating.
Oh, it does. Yeah, I certainly had never heard that story before. Is there a square with his name on it, or anything like that in town?
Not that I know of. There should be. His niece is married to a retired Dracut police officer named Tony Archinsky, and he's the one that did a great deal of research and did a self-published family history that included a lot of copies of his orders and correspondence and things like that. And Tony was the one that helped me with this story, and he was happy I could share it.
So we're running pretty low on time. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience, or?
Well, just please buy the book. It's Legendary Locals of Lowell. It's available locally at the Lowell Gallery on Jackson Street. I'm hoping that places like the Paper Store out in Chelmsford and Barnes & Noble in Nashville will have it. If not, you can go to arcadia.com, or Amazon would always have it. And I'll have copies myself. And there's various readings coming up. If they check my website, richardhowe.com, I have got a Legendary Locals page on that where all the up-to-date things are. Oh, and if you're on Facebook, please like Legendary Locals of Lowell.
Once again, Richard Howe Jr., his new book, Legendary Locals of Lowell, which he co-wrote with Shane Rosenberg. It's available downtown at the Lowell Gallery, online at Amazon.com and other bookstores. He'll also be doing a few signings in the area that we will have up on our Facebook page, which we'll also use to link to his. And you can also find this information on our website, lowellthreads.com.